Ladies and gentlemen, we are here on the Sports Shack with John and James. I'm excited to have this next guy on. He's probably one of my favorite guys in the locker rooms, you know. He's just a treasure trove of knowledge, and it's great to finally get to have him on the Sports Shack with John and James. Ladies and gentlemen, the Arab legend, Al Farat. How's it going, Al?
Hey, man, thanks for having me, man. Favorite things to do are these podcasts. You know, you get to connect with the fans, and they get to see a side of you, a personal side of you that often they don't get to see. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's no problem. And, you know, you mentioned it's kind of a view into the personal lives, and you've got a very interesting story, to say the least. That goes back to the 80s. You were in Brooklyn with a guy named Johnny Rods. Johnny Rods is kind of an unsung hero, but how did you kind of run into Johnny and get started training at his school?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been a professional wrestling fan since the early 70s. 73 is when I first saw my first match. I was a little bitty kid, and I remember watching it and being enthralled by it. And come to find out years later, after we had constructed some makeshift rings in our backyard and, done stuff like that, it turns out that my mother's cousin, Robert Cortez, not only was a professional wrestler, and he had wrestled in the WWF as the Black Tiger, also wrestled as Bobby Bold Eagle, but he had a wrestling school. And my mother kind of mentioned to it kind of in passing. She didn't take it really seriously because she obviously didn't want me, her only boy, to become a professional wrestler and get hurt. But, of course, it just piqued my interest, and eventually I went and joined his school. Well, first I went to Killer Kowalski's school when he was up in Massachusetts. And I went there one day, and it was just too far of a commute for me. Had I stuck with it, I probably would have been in the same, graduating class with Triple H, because I remember that was about the same time he was in Killer Kowalski's school. So I went. It was a few months later when I found out about my cousin, or my mom's cousin, and I went there, joined his school, which he happened to share in the same building with Johnny Rods, and I didn't know that back then. Turns out they were enemies. They didn't really like one another. And Johnny Rods trained there. I think it was Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and of course Bobby had it Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, something like that. So after starting with Bobby, he kind of, my biological blood relative, he kind of taught me everything I needed to know at first, but then, of course, Johnny was running shows. So even though he warned me not to come to Johnny's school, because it was kind of kind of an unspoken rule where you didn't go to each other's schools, I guarantee I probably was the first one that did that, and I would go 5 days a week, Of course, he got upset about it, but he later on got over it, and Johnny, sure enough, Johnny kind of polished me up and put me to work. He's kind of, he was running shows all over New York State, New Jersey, and I got to work with a lot of different guys. But the most interesting thing about it was that when I came out of when I went into Johnny's school, there was guys like Bill DeMott. There were guys like Damian Demento. These were guys that were training me, and I was in there working. We were all training together. They were new, sort of, in the business, but I was in the same, class, learning the ropes with Tommy Dreamer, Taz, the Dudley, well, one of them, Bubba Ray, little Nunzio, which became he became I forget what he became later on, but he was Damien Stone back then. Yeah, Little Guido, that's it. And all those other guys, and so I came out of that same graduating class, or the same graduating era, rather, not class. I tend to use class, but what I mean is the same year, the same era. Yeah. So, of course, that's how I got my start with Johnny Rods. It was kind of a deal where I just kind of like snuck in. I wasn't really supposed to be there, but I got in there, and thank God I did, because I came in on the ground floor when ECW first started, and of course I didn't follow those guys all the way into the prime years of ECW, but I got to work with a lot of those guys.
Yeah, man, and you kind of snuck in right there at the very end of the territory system, and you ended up in Puerto Rico for a little while there in the late 80s, early 90s. What was Puerto Rico like during that time frame?
Well, Puerto Rico, it was one of those places that every wrestler, and still to this day, they aspire to go to. Not as much today as it was back then. You know, the thing that you would hear the most from any wrestler, this is the first thing you would always hear was, my goal is to wrestle in, Mexico, Japan, and Puerto Rico. Those are the big three. That was a big deal. And I got to go to Puerto Rico when I'm talking, Abdullah the Butcher, Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen. Matter of fact, I spoke about this several times. I was there when Bruiser Brody was killed in the locker room. When he was stabbed to death, I was there, A lot of people don't know that, and people tell me, why don't you write a book? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And the truth is, there's just a lot of things that a lot of the guys that didn't make it to WWE or didn't make it to WCW, whatever, a lot of things that they went through that if you were to tell somebody, it would just be unbelievable. When I tell people I've worked against Ric Flair, when I tell people I've been in the ring and worked against the Great Muta, against all these people, Scott Hall, they almost look at me incredulously, like I'm not being truthful. But the fact of the matter is, I was there. I worked all these guys, and a lot of it is documented. A lot of it is not, But people ask me, well, what happened? Well, what happened was I got married. I got divorced several times, had kids. I had a long-standing joke in the locker room is I've got 9 kids from 10 different baby mamas. How the hell did that happen, But the reality is I pursued music. Music was truly what I love to do to this day. Music is my number one passion. And I'm kind of thankful I did, because 11 albums later, 2 of them were nominated for the Grammy Awards. Plus, I'm on the soundtrack for Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise, the first Mission Impossible movie that Tom Cruise did. I'm on that soundtrack. So I kind of followed my dream. But then what happened is I never really made it as far as I could have, because all my peers made it. Every single one of them made it, So when I got back into it, it was very easy for me to start getting all these bookings again, because I knew all these guys that had already made it. Like I went to ECW when they were in Baton Rouge at the very height of their, and I was already retired out of the business. I walked in there, Tommy Dreamer, all those guys, hey, Al, what's going on? They were trying to get me to get back in it then, but I didn't, because I was following my dream of being a musician. So then I get here, and I get bit by the bug. My current wife, had property here, and here I am, and started a wrestling school. I basically did it just to kind of make money, really. We bought a ring, started a wrestling school, and my first 2 students were Jerry the Boss Bostic and Derek Prentice. He goes by D Money, and the rest is history. I trained, Chris Cambridge, Dane Griffin, Coyote, Montego. The list goes on and on,
Oh yeah, and that's so obvious. I think it's best put, because you go into an IWR locker room, and if Al walks in the door, you immediately see the respect, because every single one of us, was either trained directly by you or is being trained sort of by proxy from someone, from that class that you trained when you first moved down here. So, you're sort of the father of the locker room, and that's so obvious to see when you just walk in, the respect.
Well, that's something that I, to this day, sends chills up my spine, because truthfully, I can't even begin to put it into words. I don't have the words. They just don't exist. I don't have the words to explain how incredibly humbling that is to me. You would think that I would bask in the glory, but it's so humbling, because truth of the matter is they are like my kids. It's funny you should say father. They are like my kids. And when I see them training these other guys, like the Truth, Chandler Hopkins, and there's just so many of them. I can't go into them, but all these guys, Dylan, they all now, they still call me on a weekly basis, and I didn't have a hand in training them at all, but they still give me props. They still show me that respect, because, like you said, they feel like, in a way, I have a hand in it, because the person training them was trained by me, and that's a legacy that I really wasn't necessarily wanting to leave behind, but I'm extremely happy that I am, because it's something to be proud of. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. And it is one of those things. When people ask, to always go, well, who trained you? And I'll say, Coyote or Montego or any of that class, and they'll go, oh, that's cool. Well, who trained them? And I'll say, oh, well, Al Farat, and they'll go, oh, Al. So it's one of those things that I think we'll see probably in the next 20 years or so. It's kind of like Tom Jones. We joked when Tom Jones passed that probably 75% of people were trained by him or you. So
Yeah.
it's a great thing for sure. Now I want to mention that you said that you kind of got out of wrestling for a while, but you found yourself in the sort of world class area, and you met or you were friends with Skandar, and you ran into him in Dallas. So how was that kind of getting you back into the business with Skandar?
Oh, well, first of all, before I answer that question, I want to say that to even be mentioned in the same sentence with Tom Jones, that's always, again, it's one of those things that just brings a tear to my eye when people say, in this state, if you were if you were trained by either one of these two, and they mentioned Tom Jones and me, then we know you're legit. That's such a powerful thing. And when they say that, because I've always considered myself, I'm just a regular person, But people, you're right. I walk into any locker room, even guys that I didn't train, and they're like that. That's the guy. And it makes me. And I often try to dress in the same locker room with them and just bullshit with them, and just kind of visit, and because I don't consider myself any better than anybody else, but they often put me, again, like you did, in that same sentence. Oh, yeah, if you were trained by Tom Jones or Al or one of these guys, it's very humbling. But speaking of legends, well, when I decided to get back into the business, I was living in Dallas, Texas. And I was dating my current wife back then, and she was thinking about going to school in Denton at I forget the name of the college there, but anyway, she was thinking about going to college there. So I was telling her about my desire to get back into. Now this was, I don't know, 15, 17 years ago, something like that. I had kind of dabbled into it a little bit in Louisiana, but I was still so heavily involved with my music that I kind of just I did some indie shows, but then one day I remembered that I had already been aware that Skandar had a school in Dallas, so I looked it up and I went and paid him a visit because I've been friends with him since the Puerto Rico days in the '80s. So needless to say, when he saw me, and of course, after the hugs and the kisses and the I love yous, we were just visiting about different things, and he says, "Oh, well, sir, Al, do you still wrestle?" I said, "No, I'm kind of out of it right now. I did a little bit in Louisiana, but I'm doing my music and stuff." But so happens that when I walked in there, I had a horrible goatee going because I hadn't shaved in a few weeks, and I never, because being in the Native American music scene, you always have to be well kept. But that day, I remember just going in there. It was after work. I had a job there in Dallas for the American Red Cross. So anyway, jokingly, he said, "When you walked in here, I thought you were an Arab. I thought you were my relatives." And anyway, so when little further down in the conversation, "Hey, if you decide to get back into it, speaking of Arab, you ought to do my gimmick because, see, he has an only son, but his son never pursued professional wrestling. So deep down inside, he's always really wanted to have somebody to follow his, to keep his name going and his legacy going." So I said, "Yeah, that'd be cool." So that kind of weighed on me. I went home, I thought about it, and I went back the following week and said, "Hey, man, I want to get back into it," because he was running shows with a guy named Tom Vance or Tom Lance, something like that. So, and I want to do your gimmick. Well, you should have seen him. He lit up like a Christmas tree, So what happened was, after he gave me his blessing and gave me my first turban and all that, I decided to honor him by wrestling in his gimmick, but I didn't want to necessarily use his name. So one of the guys that I remember growing up with, watching, which matter of fact, I had the honor of meeting him and working with his son actually, Eddie Farhat Jr. was Eddie Farhat Sr., the original Sheik. So I decided to use Al Farhat was the first name I had. So and I called Eddie because the original Sheik had already passed away. I called Eddie, and Eddie, of course, knew me for many years from doing the Indian gimmick. So he said, no problem, cuz, we'll say you're my cousin, this, that, and everything. And they really pushed it, and he put me on the website, flew me up to Detroit for several shows, did some shows as Al Farat, the other nephew, because Sabu's the real nephew of the well, I bumped heads with Sabu a little bit. We went to Puerto Rico together, and I did some stuff with Abdullah the Butcher. I mean, I was really over when I did the Sheik gimmick in the early, when was it? Late 90s. And, late 90s, early 2001, 2002. So I started doing that and got back into it, bought the curly toe boots and bought them from the same guy that made them for the original Sheik and Abdullah and Ric Flair, the legendary Clifford Macias in Houston. Matter of fact, when I walked in, he was measuring Booker T the day that I walked in there. Me and Booker were talking for a while, and I told him about Akbar giving me his. Anyway, so years later, come to find out that he really always wanted me to ask him if I could use his name. I'm talking about Skandar Akbar. He wanted me to be Skandar Akbar Jr. I didn't know this till years later, almost when he passed away. And people were telling me, he used to tell us all the time that you were his legit nephew. Yeah. And I brought a tear to my eye. So I remember calling him about 3-4 months before he passed away and bringing that up. And he said, I tell everybody you're my nephew. I kind of wish you would say the same thing, because he wanted to leave that legacy, So, so I decided to not drop the H off the Farhat and just became Farat. But then when my legit nephew started wrestling in honor of Akbar, I said, hey, could he use your name? So that's where we got Akbar Farat in honor of both myself or the original Sheik rather, and Skandar Akbar. Well, that's how I got involved with Akbar, and then of course, about 5 years ago, this young lady that's actually making a movie about the Von Erichs, or she's writing the script right now, approached me, and I thought it was a work. I really did. She approached me about a movie that she's making where Matthew McConaughey was going to play David Von Erich, and she's got the guy, I forget his name, he played Thor. Anyway, he's one of these new actors. He played Thor or in that Captain America movie. Hemsworth.
Yeah, Hemsworth.
Yeah. Well, the two Hemsworth brothers are going to play the other Von Erichs, Carrie and I guess Kevin. Mm-hmm. Well, she approached me to play the part of Skandar Akbar in the movie. I'm like, holy, I didn't believe it. I was like, no way. Yeah. So she sent me the script, and sure enough, so that's in the talks right now. But I wanted to go into that story because I wanted you to see just how much he influenced my life, and so I kind of do this for Akbar, this whole gimmick,
Yeah, man, and there's no denying the sort of the lasting impact Skandar made, really all across the scene, and you were actually one of the last, or if I'm not mistaken, the last wrestler that Skandar managed before he sadly passed away.
Yeah, I was. I'm not going to say I was the last one because I'm not sure if he had any shows that I was not aware of. I know I was damn sure one of the very last ones for sure, because the last match that he managed me in, he couldn't even walk to the ring. That's how bad off he was. He physically, of course he sat down the whole time, but right behind the curtain when we were fixing to go out, he said, "Al, could I ask you something?" And of course, I said, "Sure, no problem. I'm going to hang on to you, but make me look good. Put me over, baby. It's just going to look like I'm guiding you." But truth is, he needed my help to get to the ring, So I walked real slow. I mean, I've never walked that slow to the ring, but to me, it was an honor that he was hanging on to me. I'd be the man's crutch, to his dying day. And so we got to the ring, and then we had to sit him down in a chair, and that was one of the very last times he ever managed me. So I know for a fact he didn't manage very many people after that. And of course, he passed away, and I went to the funeral in Wichita Falls, and he got buried there because he's from Vernon, which is not too far. And his family gave me his turbans that he had, so I inherited all that. And I got to tell you, I can't even begin to tell you how much this man influenced me and how much I loved him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And just the fact that you kind of have those pieces like those turbans. Now, I want to kind of let folks in on a piece of memorabilia you have that, even kind of blew my mind. So I'll kind of set the scene, if you will. We're sitting in the depths of a shopping mall in Oklahoma City at a wrestling event. At the time, I didn't know it, but I just torn 2 ligaments, sprained and fractured my ankle in the ring. We're sitting in the back, and you're changing into these boots. They're kind of old and blue and roughed up. But you mentioned that they were owned by a certain someone that this story just blew my mind. To see such a piece of history. So, can you kind of tell us how you inherited the Sheik's boots?
Well, what happened was when I met Clifford Macias, the bootmaker, famous boot. Of course, he's no longer with us. I told him that Akbar had sent me down there, and he started showing me all these patterns of different Ric Flair, Devon Harris, oh my God, Dr. Dusty Williams, all these guys, and I had wrestled all these guys, So he said, I'm going to show you something very, very important to me. That's how he, that's how he spoke. I said, okay. So he goes to the back and he comes out and he brings out the actual last, what they used to make boots out of. And on it said Ed Farhat. I mean, I almost lost it. I wanted to kiss this last. To think that his foot touched this freaking last, I'm sorry. I feel like sometimes I have a tendency of cussing, and I don't mean to. But so he brings out the patterns, and there it is, and he goes, and this is the leather of. He used the same leather for the Sheik's boots, the same horn, the same last, same every. Matter of fact, he had pieces cut out. These were the Sheik's boots. He was because he had made them all for the Sheik, And about 2 weeks later, I go down to pick it up, and there they were. And on the inside of the blue boot, it said E. Farhat, And I'll never forget that. So did he wear them? No, he didn't wear them. But this was his leather he bought, the original Sheik. This was he only used that leather for the Sheik, but of course, the Sheik was when I started in the Arab gimmick, the Sheik had passed, Yeah. So I'm like, wow, So I told Eddie Jr. about that, and he said, send me a picture. So I sent him a picture, and sure enough, he said, yeah, I was there when my dad picked that leather out, Yeah. So when I told. God, I'm getting forgetful. When I told the guy that runs the museum in Wichita Falls, the wrestling museum, Mantell.
Yeah, John Mantell.
Johnny. When I told Johnny that story, he said, when you retire, I want those blue boots here in the museum. So that's where they're going. You notice I'll sell all my other boots I had made somewhere else, but I won't sell. I won't even. Matter of fact, I don't even wrestle with those. I'm afraid the horns are going to fall off. So I just use that when I manage. I'm going to do, special presentations and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was about to say, if Johnny hadn't claimed those, I was going to ask you how much you were going to want for those, because just the story behind that is incredible. So I wanted to get that out.
I wouldn't. I mean, I would have to be. First of all, I'm not hurting for money, but I would have to be hurting for money really, 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 really bad for me to sell those. There's no way. I would never give those away.
Yeah, for sure.
Or sell those, rather.
And now, kind of to get back to the Skandar Akbar, of course, I gotta admit, sadly, I was born in the wrong era for wrestling. Getting just at the start of the ruthless aggression era for WWE. But I've always been a big fan of old wrestling footage, and especially of stuff from the area. Your Mid-Souths and your World Class. Now, there was your friend Skandar Akbar had a little group called Devastation Inc. Now, you've kind of brought that back. It isn't your first time bringing it back. I think you brought it back in the UWF in like 2007 or so. Mm-hmm. But you've just recently reformed the Devastation Inc. as Devastation Reborn. What was the decision like to do that, to kind of pay homage to Skandar in that way?
Well, there have been several attempts, okay? There have been several attempts from different people to start Devastation Incorporated, and some have been ballsy enough to actually call it Devastation Incorporated or Devastation Inc. But it never really materialized. It kind of just maybe did a one-show appearance, and then it would kind of fall to the wayside. Everybody was always kind of afraid to do it, because of fear of maybe, I don't know, maybe someone saying from the family saying something, or maybe Vince saying, because Vince bought the world class library, so there was always that fear. But I always said, that I had his gimmick. He blessed me with that gimmick.
Yeah.
So if anybody has the right to bring back Devastation, it would be me. But I never wanted to sound braggadocious about it, so I never did it. I never wanted people to say, "Oh, look at this guy. Who does he think he is?" Even though I've been told by some of the best of the best. I mean, Tim Storm, current NWA heavyweight champion, said the same thing. He said, "Oh, you've got that right," because he was there. He knows the story about Akbar, and Akbar telling people, "Al's my nephew." Akbar wanted so bad to leave a legacy behind that, and the only reason why I'm telling this story, I'll be honest with you, had it not gotten out the way it did, I probably would be sitting here telling you he's my legit uncle and would have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
But he never really expressed it to me in private, to where we said, well, let's run with it. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where he would tell other people, and then people would be like, well, that's funny. Al never told me. So because our stories never matched, that's why I kind of never. I didn't. Had I known, I would have definitely been the heir to the throne, for lack of a better term. But anyway, so I decided, you know what? Now's the time. Now's the time to bring back Devastation Incorporated. Except in my particular case, I'm not worried about what the fans will think. I'm not worried about what his family thinks. I'm not worried about what any professional wrestler out there or promoter thinks, because I have that right. What I'm worried about is a potential lawsuit from Vince. Because the reality is, when he buys a library, to my knowledge, he owns the rights to everything associated with that brand, I guess. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm also trying to look at it as, okay, James, right? Your name is James.
Yes.
Right? Okay. James, I have a belief. I'm one of those rare older guys that I don't live in the past. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate everything I did. I acknowledge. I love it. I miss it. But the reality is, I believe in evolution. Everything evolves. Everything changes. And if you don't change with it, you get left behind. Yes, old school wrestling was awesome. Absolutely. But it had its time. Yes, hardcore wrestling is awesome. ECW was awesome, but it had its time. Yes, lucha libre, aerial wrestling from Mexico is awesome. Japanese wrestling, catch as catch can. They all cater to a certain segment of the population. Now, when you have a show and you pepper it, you sprinkle every single one of those elements, it makes for an interesting show. So to me, when a promoter tries to bring back an all old school wrestling show, well, guess what? You alienate a certain segment of the population. So it's okay to sprinkle the new with the old. It's okay to throw in a little bit of hardcore matches with a little bit of, it's okay to do comedy with a little bit of shoot wrestling. It's okay. Sprinkle it all together. That's what's made Vince so damn popular, and that's why he's still never, and no one will ever be number one. Never. The only way that somebody will ever topple him would be if he gets involved in some kind of scandal where, like Michael Jackson or something, where child pornography or something stupid like that. But other than that, nobody will ever topple him, because he's got his daughter, he's got his son, he's got his son-in-law. My point is that when I decided to bring back Devastation Incorporated, I said, I'm not going to go all the way old school with it. Yeah. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make sure that Devastation Incorporated has new blood. You know what I mean? I'm going to make sure that it can rise to the occasion during these new times. I'm going to make sure that it can compete in the Ring of Honor. I'm going to make sure that it can compete with the TNA. So how do I do that? By modernizing it, by giving it a special, kind of like my buddy Spoiler 2000. When he came up with Spoiler 2000, that was ingenious.
Yeah.
Spoiler 2000, new version. Y2J, that was ingenious. That's kind of along the same lines. I was thinking, I said, well, you know what? So we came up with a bunch of different names. Well, you remember, because you saw it on Facebook. And
yeah, and it was funny because it was kind of an undecided point, because
yeah.
you could always go with Devastation Inc. You could always go with Devastation Inc. 2.0, but
exactly.
And it was Cody Dixon who threw out the idea of Devastation Reborn, which was it was a thing that you never would have thought of. But it works so well because
it works.
and I'm surprised, like as you mentioned, being worried about Vince, that he hasn't tried something like that because what was old is new again. I mean, look at it with like teams like the Revival. They are
Yep.
your Arn and Tully, you know,
There you go.
but they come out
There you
there,
go.
and because they haven't seen an Arn and Tully in 20, 30 years, wow, that's new. That's cool. They're not flying all over the place. They're just beating the shit out of people. And
Yep.
that's why it works. So I'm surprised he hasn't tried a Devastation Incorporated, but
And I'm gonna tell you this: who's to say he won't?
exactly.
Once he sees what we're doing, because that's the one thing about this business that I hate. You start to do something, and then all of a sudden people start to take it from you. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's the nature of this business. I've learned that you can't fight it. But the reality is, because Cody Dixon and of all the guys in IWR, Cody Dixon is the only one that has direct access to me because he lives right down the road from me here in Lawton.
Yeah.
So, he picks my brain a lot. So, which is a good thing. This is what I tell all the guys to do, But he came up with that Devastation Reborn thing, and I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. That's brilliant, And here we are.
Yeah, for sure. And as I said, it was kind of a thing where it's easy to just add a 2.0, which was my mindset. I was like, well, we could just do 2.0. But that Reborn, it's just got a ring because, you think of it as it's of the same idea, but with a new flavor, a new twist. And as you mentioned, kind of picking your brain, that's what I really enjoy doing is at these IWR shows or, if we run into each other at Mid-South. And I think that's what guys could really benefit from is just having someone like you or, as you mentioned, Skandar was in Dallas, where you can just sit and kind of pick their brain and listen because, like I've expressed that I kind of want to go into managing, when you have someone like you where I can just go, well, what do you think about this? It's the ability to pitch ideas off that really helps the business grow because it's the passing of knowledge, that has kept this business alive. So now we got to talk a little business here with the Devastation Reborn. You introduced Cody, you've introduced Chris Cambridge. Now, apparently, you guys assaulted Eddie Adamson, but he got in the way. But he has suspended you. Is it an overreach of power? Is that what it is?
Not Al Pacino, like Robert De Niro says in that movie. No, you're good, you. Look, I like the direction we're going with this. I like the storyline. I like the story that's being told. I got to tell you, I'd be remiss not to say this, but if I didn't mention this, that show in Broken Bow made Devastation Reborn look absolutely like the most dominating thing in professional wrestling in many, many years. It
sure.
really, I mean, I wish we were on TV. I mean, that's how good it was. We made an impact. We caused an impact. And what a shame that it wasn't. See, that's the only thing about IWR. I wish we had a little more. I wish we exposed the storylines more and presented it to the people more in some type of format. You know what I mean? Because the only people that got to see that there were the people that were there in Broken Bow.
Yeah, I got to admit, I felt so bad because I was running the camera for that show. And, of course, I had no idea what all was going down, so I just seen you guys lay everybody out. I turned the camera off. I ran downstairs to help out. And I come down, and I see you, Chris, and Cody just laying everybody out. And I'm sitting there, and I go, oh, I just missed what made Devastation Inc. right there. And luckily, I wasn't one of the ones that got taken out, because I looked down from the curtain, and I just see you going, you're getting it, and you're getting it, and start throwing punches. But I felt so bad that I was not able to catch that. It because I feel like I kind of didn't let that get the jump start that it did in Broken Bow. Luckily we caught you laying out the commissioner and all of that, which helped a little bit. But I feel really bad about missing that last few moments there.
Well, it happens. But the reality is that now I've been suspended as a result, and that's why I haven't been to the last few shows, of course. For storyline purposes anyway.
Of course.
And I'm going to tell you something. That no good, dirty Eddie Adamson has something in store for him. I have something up my sleeve. And when I come back, which will be next Saturday, I have surprise for Eddie Adamson. No, seriously, I'm really excited to see the direction we're going with. I just hope they keep it going. The momentum that we got. Again, something needs to be done about cataloging all this stuff. Because had that all been caught on camera and cataloged and put in a format where it can be seen by many people, that the rise of Devastation We've Reborn was out of this world. It was epic. And but now we just have to figure out a way how to just keep telling the story,
Yeah, for sure, man. So, as you mentioned, you'll be in Dibble, at the Dibble Middle School for Night of Honor 2. The night before that, you'll be down in Sherman, Texas for Robert Langdon and the guys over at Texoma Pro. Let's give the folks the details on that. It's Friday, April 21st at 8 p.m. at the Sherman Elks Lodge. They're doing a fan costume contest. Dress as your favorite wrestler or original for prizes. Who knows? I might have to, it's about 3 hours down there. I might have to make the trip and see if I can find a turban between now and then.
You know what? I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to go on the record right now. If I show up to that show and I walk out of those curtains and I see you in the turban, I am going to shit my pants. I may even go over there and kiss you right on the mouth.
But say I've thought of it. I thought about hitting you up. Where in the hell do I get a turban and some boots? I don't know. But
well, what would be funny? What would be funny if you made the horns out of duct tape and just put them on a pair of sneakers or regular combat boots. That'd be funny.
But say I've seen people do that. Maybe I pay a little tribute to you. Otherwise, wear the crocodile cowboy boots out there. Tickets are $20 for VIP. Doors are at 6:30. General admission. Doors open at 7. And it's just $10. VIP includes an early entry meet and greet, event poster, and preferred seating. That is the 21st at the Sherman Elks Lodge. And then the next night, Imperial Wrestling Revolution, our good friends over at the IWR, Night of Honor 2 at the Dibble Middle School gym. Doors open at 6. So yeah, that's where you can find out Farat. If you got anywhere else, go ahead and mention it.
Well, I don't live too far from Oklahoma City. You can make your way down to at least Anadarko, and I can pick you up and make it happen, brother. By the way, I forgot to tell you. I was going to say you didn't mention it, but you didn't know. In Sherman, I will actually be taking on one of my dearest friends in my personal dearest friends. But I have a funny story about that. But anyway, I'll be in the main event, and inside that ring, we're not going to be friends, Barbarian. Listen to me very carefully. It's going to be bad guy versus bad guy. Let's see who the better bad guy is. Farat or the Barbarian. How do you like that? Pretty cool, huh?
Oh, man, that is going to be awesome for sure. So if you're anywhere near the Dallas, Ardmore, Texoma area, make sure you can get out there. I'll see how my school schedule's looking, see if I can break out, maybe head down to that show. I know I'll be in Dibble with the IWR, as always. And, Al, where can people find you on social media? Find out where your wrestling events will be. You're a musician with your Otter Tail. You play powwows all across. I actually ran into you at a powwow and didn't know it because I just always assumed, well, Al Farat, wouldn't have thought a Grammy-nominated musician.
Where did you go?
It was I can't remember the name of the powwow. It was, I think they call it Indian City, just south of Anadarko last, I believe, September, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Didn't know it. I saw somebody, I went, looks like Al, whatever. I didn't think of it, and,
it probably was Al.
It probably was, yeah. So, where can they find you on social media, Ottertail, anything else you want to plug?
Okay, first of all, you say Otter Tail one more time, and I'm going to put you in the camel clutch and humble you. Brother, it's Otter Trail, like trail.
Otter Trail, I'm sorry.
Okay, for all my wrestling fans, brother, you can catch me on www.facebook.com/the Arab Legend Al Farat, all one word. You can also go on YouTube and check out all the Al Farat videos. I'm trying to get somebody to start me a damn Al Farat channel. I don't know how to do that.
But I'd set one up for you if you want me to.
Okay, good. And I want to start an Otter Trail channel too. And then for my music, same thing. Go to www.facebook.com/Otter Trail, all one word. That's about it. My calendar is very, very. If I go into it right now, it would. And I'm being very, very honest. If I go into it right now, you'll need another 30 minutes just for my dates. Man, I've got stuff. I've got so many wrestling dates. I'm going to Lincoln, Nebraska, Chicago, Illinois, California. My nephew Akbar Farat's getting tryout with TNA in 2 weeks. He's got a bunch of stuff he's doing. He's trying to get me in the door with TNA. If he gets in, who knows what's going to happen. You may see Al Farat on TV sometime pretty soon. So check out my dates on either one of those Facebook pages and follow me, whether you're into powwows or professional wrestling, either one. So thanks for having me on the show. I had an absolute blast. Anytime you need me to come back on, I do these all the time. And again, the reason why I look forward to doing these podcasts, and believe me, I've done hundreds of them, is because I get to really connect with the fans. I noticed something I said earlier on about mixing the old with the new. In this day and age, that's what seems to be over. That's what seems to be hot is the shoot interview. The realism of reality TV. So people want to see what Lana sounds like on Total Divas because they see her on Monday Night Raw with an accent, then they see her here without an accent. And that's interesting. It's intriguing for people. So they tune in. So thanks for having me on board, man. I love to do these. Anytime you need me to come back on, just give me a holler.
All right, will do, folks. That is the Arab legend Al Farat.